Welcome to the Journey of an Aesthete podcast, a comprehensive examination of all things aesthetic, the arts, the humanities, and what it means to be human. Back in the 1960s and 70s, commercial institutions, namely network television, would have what they called special episodes. This is aside, of course, from the fact of the after-school special, in which the entire hour-long fictional social narrative dealt with a particular social ill or problem, teen pregnancy, or the AIDS virus, or domestic violence, even, and rape and incest were all very serious, most serious themes that were dealt with on such shows. And I remember on the TV show Different Strokes, they even had a sitcom. They had a special episode about a pedophile, and they had Conrad Bain, the actor, would introduce the show and say that this is a very serious social problem, and parents and children must watch this. And the great actor Gordon Jump, a wonderful actor, played the perpetrator. I mean, that's just one episode, but there were a lot of these kinds of mass-produced entertainments, if that's the word, that were means for a mass public to come together in some kind of crude consensus around a social ill that would affect, I guess, all of, in this case, America. So, on Journey of an Aesthete, I guess you can say that this episode is our special episode. And the subject, of course, since this is recording in May 2020, is this virus, the pandemic. However, this is a little bit different. My show is always, and has been, always will be, about the arts and the human spirit. And I believe that the human spirit and the arts will go on no matter what. That they are totally eternal. And that's a faith, article of faith on my part, I suppose. It's a faith that I have. I hope some of our listeners share that. But in that spirit, I thought it would be really great to get a sort of a snapshot of where artists are in their lockdown, what they're doing during this time when there are a lot of instances they're having to stay at home or having to stay indoors. I thought it'd be nice to hear from the artists themselves in their own words. And of course, from hopefully a pretty diverse bunch of people. It's not many, but I call this Kaleidoscope of Souls. And kaleidoscope, of course, is a very ancient word, actually. As it goes back to the ancients, even though it also has a history of a term having to do with color refraction and different shards of color that are combined together. And I got the idea of a kaleidoscope of souls because I think in human life each of us are parts, a refraction of color, different colors, that in a way we are separated from each other in our individuality, but nevertheless we're all human, and we form a kaleidoscope. And this is a kaleidoscope, calling this Kaleidoscope episode. and just give everybody 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe 20, and people talking. And I guess this is my portion, since I'm the host, Mitch Hampton, and I, basically during this time I've been indoors a lot, and I've been doing my music. And I've been doing writing one piece of music right now, which takes up a lot of my composing time. That is, I promise, is hoping it will be a long work, a larger work, perhaps a half hour in length with many different movements, and I've been working a lot on that. Of course, I've been working on this podcast, which continues. But everybody's, of course, brings their individual temperament and character and nature to this shared event, which in many respects is catastrophic and nightmarish, and very serious, most serious. Yet everybody again brings their own style to this thing that we are all forced into sharing. That's all I have to say myself. I look forward to hearing all the voices edited together. Everybody involved in this has many interesting things to say and valuable things to say, I believe, even if it's somebody talking about doing artwork in their kitchen, which I think one person, a couple of people mentioned, or if it's just somebody expressing their need to walk in the woods or go outside and how that's brought them some kind of sanity, or maybe even more than sanity. Everybody's different, and I hope that difference comes out in this episode. And I hope that the end result will be something valuable to listen to now and the future as well. All right, thank you. And it's the Kaleidoscope of Souls. Hope you enjoy it.
Hello?
Is this Hannah?
This is Hannah, yes.
Hannah, this is Mitch Hampton from Journey of an Aesthete podcast.
Hi, Mitch.
Hello, and you're going to be part of a sort of, I call it a Kaleidoscope of Souls episode. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure I get the pronunciation of your last name. Okay, yes. It's Hannah. Let me
Sharafian.
I was going to say Sharafian. So it's Hannah Sharafian.
Okay. Yes.
And we are talking to you, I believe, in the epicenter of what's going on now, because you are because you are in New York City, Manhattan, no less.
I'm in Brooklyn, but yes.
Oh, okay, Brooklyn.
There's not much of a difference at this point in terms of.
Oh, of course. I didn't mean.
Yeah.
My brain was sort of being. A lot of our brains are kind of freezing up from time to time these days, I think. And we could talk about that. But it's really an honor and pleasure to have you speaking to us from Brooklyn, New York, at this time in April. And
thank you.
There's two things we can talk about. We could talk about what's going on there directly. Now, I believe you're an actor and a writer, correct?
Yes, I am. And I think in terms of theater, I think everything right now is very much still an open question. I mean, I think Broadway, for at least through midsummer, is shut down. A lot of summer seasons have been called off, but I think there's a lot of figuring out what's going to happen instead, how auditions work instead. So it's been a period of pretty rapid transition where you're just kind of always, I guess, like flexibility is a big part of what's happening on everyone's side. I think both the creators and actors and producers and directors, I think everyone's just kind of trying to figure out not only when, but how everything is going to be starting up again. But I don't really know how much to say about that because it feels like it's still such an uncertain thing without really anything concrete to hold on to necessarily.
Well, that's a good beginning for our what will be probably too brief a discussion. I'm not an expert on your work, unfortunately.
That's all right. I'm not either.
Well, what I do know is that you're doing a project on a Mary Shelley, so you're
yes.
sort of a Mary Shelley scholar.
Yes, yeah. I think that's been an interesting process. This is my first time writing anything based on an actual person, and I actually I kind of took hold of, there's this Henry James quote when he was writing the Aesthete papers. He wrote,
I love the Aesthete papers. It's one of my top.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's a veiled reference to Percy Shelley. I mean, he's made the poet American, but it's still very much him and Claire Claremont, who's a figure in Shelley and Mary Shelley's life. But he talked about kind of this point where you learn enough about a person but no more, because eventually what you're doing is you're not writing a biography, you're writing a piece of fiction. Mm-hmm. And you're telling a story, and you have to hit this point where you know the story that you've seen in this person's life that resonates with you, that you want to tell, and you kind of ask their permission and maybe their forgiveness if you think, and you go ahead with that. And so it was a period of very intense research followed by writing, and those two things stayed pretty separate. And then now gearing up towards the final editing and getting towards more of an idea of performance, the research starts to come back into play, and I can a little more marry those things. But it was a very conscious effort to figure out what the story being told is, because I mean, even Mary Shelley wrote biographies constantly, and she's kind of famous or infamous for doing an annotated work or an annotated version of Percy Shelley's poems that kind of rewrote his life, which solidified him in people's minds as this kind of fairy-like figure that we see today. So she's also someone who very much created people through biography and altered things and left things out and elided history for reasons that were, I think, understandable and complex and maybe neither right nor wrong, but made me really interested then to see, to explore her life and see what else was there.
So I guess you're able to, I hope you're able to work on this project currently in your home there or your apartment, right?
Yes, yeah, I think, the nice thing in a way about writing is it can be done anywhere. It can be done, ideally at a certain point you have people that you're working with, and you can have a more collaborative process. But yeah, there's always things to work on. I think the question is just now, when it can advance past just being something that exists kind of alone. And that was something that that time frame, I think, has been pushed back and will be a little more of an open question now. But yeah, I think the thing about creativity is that you can be creative and you can create anywhere at any time in theory. And one of the things that actually has been really interesting about going back to this Mary Shelley and her life right now is she's someone who actually really struggled to work when she was unhappy. She had very severe issues with depression, and she also had, a very difficult life and a lot of loss in it. And she often ended up in these situations where she was incredibly isolated and shut off from people that she knew and cared about. And those were not periods where she was writing. Those weren't periods where these, for all that Frankenstein and many of her other books have this kind of intense loneliness in them, and it would seem maybe like those were coming out of very dark times. She couldn't write during those times, really. Anything that she would write was biography or history. So I think this idea of creation during periods of difficulty or isolation, I think there's this pressure that gets put on us, that because these are things that can be done alone and don't require anything, there's this idea that I've certainly had and am dealing with, where things can continue just as before. We have all this time. We have all of this free mental space right now, potentially, that we don't normally have. And I think I've been really aware of kind of like looking at Mary Shelley as an example of it doesn't always work that way, and that's also okay. And that's also, I think, the idea of adversity creates art is something that, while it can be sometimes inspiring and helpful, can also be this trap where you expect people to rise above a circumstance when that might not be fair or possible. So, yeah, with both things, I guess both things being true, that this is a time that is, I think, for some people, a real gift of space in a very strange time, and also that it's not as straightforward as just, you have the time, now go create. If that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Of course, anything that adds burden to people is not really such a great thing. It's just, it's interesting. I don't mean to change the subject too much, but when you're talking about Mary Shelley, my last encounter with her work was in 1987. Serious encounter in terms of real in depth, like what you're talking about. And I was at New England Conservatory of Music. And one of my mentors there in the humanities was a woman named Sandra Joshel. And I took women's studies with her at that time. It was also a basic literature class of some kind. She would invent her own classes, and one of the books she assigned was The Last Man.
Yes, yeah.
Which seems a very appropriate text for now, in a way. I don't know what you think about that, but
I think so. I think one of the things that makes it especially interesting right now, actually, is one of the, obviously there's the main premise of The Last Man is this kind of the extinction of humanity through disease, and it's a post-apocalyptic plague novel of a kind. But I think the thing about it that I've always found especially interesting is that it's also about, more than that, kind of the destruction of this society and like intellectual circle that Mary Shelley was a part of. It's very thinly veiled. Really just changed slightly in name. Versions of Shelley and Byron, and the main character is considered to be a version of Mary Shelley. But the society that they've created, which is in theory the society that all of them were kind of arguing for and fighting for, is the thing that kind of goes sour and collapses. So I think, right, that idea of you think you have this thing that's working, and you kind of see through this outside force, which is actually in that case and in this disease, you kind of see these holes in this thing that you thought was very solid. And I think she and her stepsister Claire both kind of came out of that time, that intellectual circle with some. They weren't able to hold on to that idealism, and I think Mary tried much harder to.
Mm-hmm.
But you see in The Last Man that as much as she might have professed to continuing to be a part of that and hold on to that, she had some very severe doubts. And Claire, meanwhile, just went completely off. She started writing I believe it was an autobiography that was only recently kind of uncovered in the New York Public Library, where she just had extremely negative, like vitriolic descriptions of Shelley and Byron and the society as this thing that kind of like ate people up and spat them out. So I think that the disease element, as obvious of a parallel as it is, and as like, I think that the thing that has really been compelling me about that book, which is it's a strange book. I believe it was actually her favorite.
Yes, absolutely.
But definitely not. Yeah, but it's the kind of, just the disillusionment of it, while simultaneously kind of idolizing the individuals, it's a very strange and unusual thing that's like holding a lot of parts together. And I think that while we're in the middle of this, it's kind of hard to see exactly what's going to play out at the end. I don't think we're going to end up in a Last Man situation. That's not where we are.
Right.
But it is the question of what comes up after is one that she didn't really deal with, that I think we will.
Huh. And what would that be?
I think I'm not sure. I think again, she kind of avoided setting up an alternative by just killing everyone off. I mean, you don't need to change a society if it's just completely destroyed and there's no one left to do anything else. And I think there's a hope here. Ideally, I mean, one always wants to kind of hope for things, of maybe being able to say, oh, that didn't work, or these things didn't work. What can we do differently? What can change? Or just emotionally, I think it's a global shift, and I don't know, and I don't want to be over optimistic or sound like I know what I'm talking about when I don't, but I do think that that's a question that was not. She really wasn't someone who looked to the future much. I think she was very much trying to survive her present. And I think this is a situation where I think we will have a point where we are looking to the future. And I think she has a lot of sides to the state of being a human in the moment, but not, I wouldn't look to any of her works for where we're going next. Right.
Well, I mean, it's really, to me, I'm really have a lot of gratitude that you took time to discuss her and these things in the midst of what's going on, and doing it from Brooklyn, New York. It's really kind of a gift from my point of view. And it's, it really couldn't be more important what we're talking about. I think. Are you, when you're, and I guess you're in lockdown or you're at home, are you working? I mean, just to say, before we have to go, unfortunately, it's all too brief discussion. Are you also going to be performing this play, or are you?
Yes, at some point in the future. Like
in the
I
future,
said, this spring was supposed to kind of be the time when I would be doing like more workshops and putting it in front of other people, and potentially at this point, producing some sort of like smaller production, just because there's so much that you can do alone, but there's always, I mean, theater is about the audience as much as anything, and you can't really know what you've made until you have that part in place. So I think that part has obviously been put on indefinite hold. It's a chance to kind of get to know it more, figure out more what it's going to be. But yes, there will be at some point a performance at some point in the future, as yet unknown, and kind of indefinitely postponed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really excited when someone like yourself is doing a project like this, where they're acting in it and they're writing it, and there's so much to it. And as I said, the topic is so important. I mean, Mary Shelley is really a real important figure in art history and in literature and all sorts of things. And I want to.
Oh, I think it's not something I ever saw myself doing. This was very much a situation where it was project driven rather than something that I'd ever seen coming for myself. Like, I hadn't really seen myself as the kind of like person who would create a show for themselves and then write it and produce it. I think it's very much, I just felt every time I saw anything about Mary Shelley, I just felt like things were missing. And eventually I realized, well, if you feel so strongly that those things are missing, maybe you need to go and put those, like, make the version that has what you think needs to be said.
Absolutely.
So that's,
yeah. Well, Hannah, I thank you again for this time. And is there anything before you go you want to say about anything that comes into your consciousness? It could be about this or something else or anything that.
Oh, no, I can't think of anything right now. Thank you so much for reaching out. And this is, I think, a very interesting time, and I'm so curious to hear what everybody has to say and what you come up with. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Hannah, and be safe.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye. Tyler Bejoines. We are joined today by Tyler Bejoines on our Kaleidoscope of Souls for the Journey of an Aesthete podcast. And this is a special episode, hearing from different voices during this world historic event or crisis or catastrophe, as the case may be. And different people are going to be talking and expressing what's going on in their immediate environment, and above all in their immediate artistic process, whatever it may be, and can kind of talk about it. So what's going on at the moment over there? You're in Watertown, Cambridge, correct?
Watertown, Massachusetts, yeah.
Watertown, Massachusetts, excuse me, which is very close to Cambridge. But you, what's the mood there in the street or in the house or?
Well, people are responding to it differently.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are those who are taking it seriously, who are wearing masks. And am I on the speaker? It sounds like my voice is being echoed back. Like
no, there's no speaker. I don't know. Is it? I mean, I can hear you clearly, but maybe it'll be a little reverb probably.
Okay. Well, yeah. The feeling on the street here is, you know, some people everyone's responding differently to it, I guess. I mean, I'm doing my best to stay at home here, yeah. And calling on all my faculties of, you know, kind of trying to cope with what's happening.
Yeah.
But I've luckily we have the good word from Anthony Fauci to tell us what's what.
Yeah, you're following the doctor.
The good doctor.
The good doctor, Fauci. And I guess Randy Newman has sent a PSA now, where he made up a song on the spot talking about, you know, not touching your face and.
and your loved ones at home. So I know that. But I wanted you to I wanted you to talk about what you were doing in this time. I think you're doing some different kinds of things other than songwriting or singing or.
Well, I've been doing that too, but I've also been working on this movie script.
Okay.
And it's about this woman who returns back to the school she went to college in, and had an affair with this kind of teacher's assistant who works there, and this guy is kind of an unrepentant jerk, but they have kind of one night where they encounter each other for the first time in a while. And I've been trying to write that.
Well, that's certainly a very some would say explosive, indeed, I guess timely or timeless, I guess, narration. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a kind of comic brutality to a lot of what happens in the script so far, and it's less to do with I guess a realism as to what would happen in those situations, and more just kind of almost like a hyperbolic, in a way, extravagant kind of dialogue. But that in itself isn't too far off from the way a lot of friends of mine who I met at college tend to speak and behave around one another.
So you're saying there's an influence of Simon's Rock, the school, which is also
yeah.
I guess that's the school that attended by two of your favorite filmmakers, the
Coen brothers.
The Coen brothers, and you've mentioned that before. But did you want to read something from the screenplay? I know there's a lot of dialogue in it, and it's.
Well, I'll read a monologue that this character kind of gives in the middle of it. He's kind of like a Greek chorus to what's happening with these two characters in this bar room. He kind of, this dude in sunglasses just kind of shows up out of nowhere and gives this speech to the woman, the character Nicole, and the character's name is Dan Sunshine, which is the real name or the assumed name of a friend of mine in real life.
Well, that's it. Dan Sunshine is someone we both know. Back when I lived in Boston, I guess I knew him from Pete's Coffee, because I think he worked at Pete's, but I guess he's since moved on to other things. But he has quite a name, Dan Sunshine, and I have to say that he lives up to his name in certain respects. So.
Yeah, so just imagine a kind of tall, lanky fella in sunglasses coming in out of the blue to give this speech. I'm about to read to you here. He says, "Hey, lady, what's your name? Nicole? That's a very pretty name. They call me Dan Sunshine. And I'll tell you one thing, Mama, that sunshine is referring to the eternal light. I know you think that man over there ain't so hot, but forgiveness is a sweet thing, my dear. I learned that too late. Once I was engaged to a woman, and I found out that she was cheating on me with a fella named Reggie. I parked my van outside their place when they were getting down, and I sat there for a few hours. I was so mad that I didn't know what to do. When Reggie came out of my old lady's house, I was ready to kick his butt. Then it occurred to me, I got to forgive this man. Reggie is like you or me. He screws up from time to time, and he's a braggart and can be a jerk, but he's my brother, and that is the truth. So be easy on him, and be easy to the man who screwed up because he needs some affection, can you dig? Now I got to go. I got to go play some pinball with my buddy Albert. Hey, Phil, get this lady some nachos. I'll see you later. All right, bye."
Well, that's quite a speech. I like the part about giving
the nature of forgiveness. Yeah,
giving her some nachos. Well, forgiveness. That reminds me of Alan Garfield dying at 80 today or yesterday. The actor.
Oh, yesterday.
Alan
Oh, wow.
Oh, you didn't know that? Okay, so sometimes as an actor, he would make these entrances. Although, these kind of entrances that are almost a little bit dubious or sinister sometimes, right? Or funny. But your Dan Sunshine character is that's a whole different kind of chorus, a whole different
It's very very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing writing dialogue, man, because you know, it's like people talk in different ways, and you know, it's you kind of got to think about what serves to move the plot along, and what hopefully isn't, you know, and what's interesting for the viewer. But I'm just trying to write for a kind of film that I would enjoy checking out. You know.
Yeah, it does sound like some of the kind of movies we would probably be seeing in the theater back when there were back when that was a thing, that you would go in a darkened room with other people and look at something.
That's a very pre-corona concept.
It's a very analog and very pre-corona experience. So I guess for you it's not really a stretch. I mean, I know that you write a lot of lyrics and a lot of songs, and you're pretty prolific. But would you say that your writing a screenplay is in some way connected to those other projects in a way? No? Or yes?
Yeah. Well, you know, we're talking about how there are some songwriters who can kind of improvise a lot with their lyrics, and some who just kind of always stick to what the song is as it was originally written. And I've always been someone who's kind of liked to play around with the original song, and you know, replace some phrases with others. And I'm wondering if I have to get the chance to make this film, if I'm gonna be one of those people who can improvise as the movie goes along, kind of rewrite, or if everything needs to be done as written. Because, you know, you pointed out to me that people think all, you know, Cassavetes stuff was improvised, but that wasn't the case at all. You know, it was all pre-planned and written down.
Yeah, it's a difficult question when you know about a movie, but you only know it from the outside and looking at it. That's very different than if you do like a research into the production history of something or how it was made. And, you know, that's you know, there's benefits to both. I mean, there's benefits to not knowing a lot about something and just experiencing it.
Yeah.
And there's also benefits to being an expert on something and becoming knowledgeable about a thing. They both have their virtues, I guess. Is there anything you want to say to people about your experience there in Massachusetts at this particular time, or any about the scripture writing, or anything that comes to mind in your consciousness?
Well, you know, I was just been thinking about in regards to not my script, but music, and just how important it is, I think, for a writer or performer to have an audience to sort of test his or material out in front of. You know, this like how much can be gained from just playing in front of an audience. And that's one thing that's I really miss right now, is kind of not knowing when I can be able to play with my band again, and kind of you know, play these new songs I've been writing.
Yeah, well, that's I know that you just celebrated a birthday, and I know that your birthday concert was canceled because of this. What's going on in the world?
That and another gig of mine I had to cancel too. And I was kind of in denial about this whole thing up to that point. I thought we were going to be able to carry on, but it was definitely not the case.
Well, different people were responding to this at different times. They're really like a different timeline.
Yeah.
In terms of where they are, but that's what people do in life anyhow. You know, I mean, people are slow and fast, or somewhere in between, and they come at things in different experiences. I mean, I could tell you, being in Watertown is very different than being where I am in Weaverville, North Carolina. I mean, it couldn't be more different.
I mean, just the fact that you were getting your air conditioning fixed the other day says a lot about the difference in climate, to say the least.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's important here, particularly if you have an 80 degrees in the day and all that.
Did you have an air conditioner repairman come over to your house?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, they came, but they came in a very specific kind of way with precautions and all kinds of, yeah.
Were they wearing masks?
Oh yeah, we all are. I mean, the whole world is. I've got my mask,
Yeah.
and you know, I mean, and we had to be done a certain way, and I had to leave my home and then come back and all that, and I mean, do you really want women to go through? I mean, it's just not the most interesting subject to me, but you know, if that's
Yeah, I mean, I had to put on a red bandana as I went to go get some groceries the other day. I felt like I was casing the joint there.
Yeah,
know?
You felt like you were actually in a scene from Straight Time.
Exactly.
Yeah, scene from Straight Time.
I was ready to say, give me these bananas, and that's the end of the story there.
Well, it's really great to hear your voice and hear that you're writing a screenplay. That's really something. I always thought that you had it in you to write a film, actually. And
oh, thank you.
And I sort of what I hear is kind of interesting that this character talks to this woman coming out of a bar and about the power of forgiveness. I mean, that's a very bold move, you know.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in putting up a character on the screen with this kind of obnoxious professor guy who's really not likable, but you're kind of drawn to watch him anyway. So that's my goal there.
Well, you know, people write things in the flow of history. I should say in the throes of history, because, you know, I mean, I remember I was rewatching Man Who Fell to Earth earlier this year, and, you know, the Rip Torn character in that, you know, the Rip Torn character that is a professor who is intimate with his students, right, and kind of some science professor.
Oh yeah.
And in that film, and Rip Torn really relishes playing that role, and then but it's a small part of the film. It's maybe 10 minutes of the film, and people discuss it. And then, you know, Rip Torn goes out to the desert and gives up that life of, I guess, hedonism or life of that kind of life. I don't know what you call it. I'm trying to be neutral in my description, if that's possible. But I'm just thinking, you know, the point of view of people in 1974 regarding that as a character would be very different than today, of course. In other words, it would be treated differently, I guess, in the way Nicholas Roeg treats it, or Nick treated it. And of course, Rip Torn is such a great actor, and you know, we lost him this year too. But I guess you're writing a film about a teacher, and I guess a professor and a student, right? And so that's
Although it should be noted that the professor is kind of still a guy in his kind of early 30s, late 20s. So he's I would say about 5 or 6 years older than the female protagonist of the film. So
yeah. Well, it's
which is say different than a 70-year-old guy starting an affair with a 20-year-old. So
sure, I mean it just made me think of different treatments of that in prose and in film over the years, and how people would regard it differently. Not that the act is different. Of course, that's a separate question of whether, in fact, it is different or the same. I mean, things are what they are. But, of course, things are taken more seriously and with more urgency at one time than another time. Yeah. And, you know, and that's some would say that's a form of progress, you know. But, you know, that's my interest, of course, of this podcast is the fact that you're actually writing this thing during lockdown, right, or during this virus time, COVID-19. And, of course, you're writing a screenplay, and that's great to hear that you're doing that. And I'm happy.
Well, I'm kind of curious to other people's experiences of what's happening right now, because it's, I have ways to kind of focus my attentions and energies into writing the script and other things there. And I just hope people can find outlets for this kind of time that's been in lockdown.
Yeah, well, I've got my Steinway Grand here, and I'm writing a multi-movement piece. It's a serious piece of music, but the title is "All Dressed Up with No Place to Go," and it's It's in several movements, and it's
wow.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'm writing. I've suspended other things. I think there's one other thing. There is one other thing I have to finish based on a hymn, but that's more straightforward. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing. But I don't think I'm going to write a song called "Flatten the Curve." You know.
Yeah, well, you need a mini Moog synthesizer.
I would need a mini.
Have one of those.
Yes,
around.
I would need a mini Moog synthesizer and a kind of a Larry Carlton on electric guitar or something, and Will Lee on bass or Steve Gadd on drums. That could be a
Steve Gadd.
playing "Flatten the Curve." Well, Tyler, thanks for your time on a Journey of an Aesthete, and keep us posted on the film or whatever else is important to you to discuss.
Yeah, it was a pleasure hearing from you, Mitch.
Yes, thank you, and wash your hands, as they say, and listen to the good doctor.
Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Anthony Fauci. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Jane LeCroy.
Hi, it says no call. I was figuring no one called me, and we had our plans, so it had to be you.
Okay, what do you mean no one called? Well, it's your birthday. You should be getting a lot of, in theory, you should be getting a lot of...
Well, hopefully, I honestly hate my birthday.
Oh,
so
really?
It's not advertised, so hopefully, I'm getting lots of texts and calls.
Yeah.
But not calls. I really actually hate when people call me, and I think, I feel like the phone is from another era and that we don't use the phone anymore. And whenever anyone calls me, like right now, you have a purpose. Like this is a different thing. And of course, there's still conversations I need to have. But in general, why would anyone call unless they needed to talk to you that minute or you had a plan to talk? But like that, phones are they're so interruptive,
Yeah. Well, this is Journey of an Aesthete, and Eugene LeCroy, or one of the guests on our episode, which I'm calling.
Yes, I love the episode. Thank you.
I'm calling a kaleidoscope of souls, and you're one of the souls that's on this episode because you are in the
cool.
You are in the epicenter of what the world is going through. Because you're in New York City, right? You're in Manhattan.
In Manhattan,
as we speak, and you're probably on your rooftop, or maybe not. We could talk about that.
Well, it's windy. It's windy and cold. So spring in New York is pretty much freezing. So this is a cold spring day, but the leaves are blooming. It's been cloudy mostly. Sometimes the sun comes out a little bit. I'm not really a big fan of spring. I really think spring is just winter with a little bit of makeup on, and it's really not enough for me.
Well, so, you and I both love the summer. That's true.
Yeah, more of a summer, fall person. Spring, not.
But I just wanted to get your thoughts and your consciousness about where you are at this moment in New York, in the place that the whole world is watching. I guess they used to say. Back in the day, maybe they still say things like that. I don't know, but what you're doing in terms of your poetry or anything else, or what your family's doing, or what's going on, or
well, everyone is working really hard to keep up their Pollyanna attitude that things are going to be fine, but everyone's freaking out. We're really staying in our homes. There's definitely a lot less traffic. During the day, you see a lot of people taking walks, but they are staying 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
This week, everyone started wearing masks. Now, if you don't wear a mask, you kind of get like an evil eye from people. The social distancing is taken very seriously. Stores have chalk marks or spray paint outside of them 6 feet apart. They only let 10 customers into a store at a time. The headlines every day, which I think we all share all across the country, don't seem like they're from real life. They seem like they're from a plot in a science fiction dystopian future movie or novel. And I think everyone's just trying to hold it together. We're all getting used to working from home and learning how to use Zoom. It's like everything is through the computer now.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because you're one of the people actively using Zoom in your teaching. You did that yesterday, right?
Yes.
I was wondering how many. I was wondering how the students are responding to that or not, or that's what that's like. And if you could speak for a few minutes on that.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Students, love to connect. They really miss the social aspect of school. And while school has moved online the way regular classrooms are in New York City, there's usually 32 kids in a class, and that is too big to Zoom. You can't really have a good session with that many little squares on the screen or manage everyone's voices. So my kids' schools, there are really no things like Zoom for regular school. But, you know, they're getting worksheets, and the teachers have quote-unquote office hours where you can, like, chat with them.
Yeah.
But there's no class interaction. There's no class discussion. My classes, I teach poetry at an after-school program in the community. My classes are about 10 kids, which is perfect for a Zoom session, and it's very manageable, a much different number than 32.
Oh, yeah.
And also, my class, everyone wants to be there. You know what I mean? It's like a choice. It's not like school where every kid has to be there. So I have a group of a small group of cooperative kids that want to be there. So, you know, it makes Zoom a pleasurable, you know, interaction. And my students are just so lonesome and love seeing each other's faces. I thought it would be terrible and they would hate it. But it turns out they're all home and they treasure the time we have. You know, our Zoom meetings scheduled are the highlights of their lives. I mean, I'm getting emails from parents all the time saying, this Zoom class is saving my kid's life.
Wow.
Me and Ruther, she's the one who runs and invented Uptown Stories, the organization where I teach, which is where professional artists and writers work with kids. And it's like all different types of writing. It's like there's, you know, comics, journalism, script writing, you know, it's like all different art forms of writing. We thought that Uptown Stories might go under. Like, we were like, oh no, like this is going to kill us. But it hasn't at all. Like, the kids really want to continue online. We've switched our classes. We used to meet once a week for 2 hours. Now we meet twice a week for 1 hour because we are sitting at a computer, and the kids actually want to see each other more.
Right.
For a lot of kids that are actually only children, it's, you know, they can FaceTime with a friend or two or whatever, but that experience of a group sharing ideas and having a discussion that they're used to at school, and, you know, they all admit they took for granted, you know, they love that they get to have that on Zoom. So it is a great tool. I definitely don't prefer it to in person, but it's awesome that we can do this. And I appreciate this tool that the pandemic has revealed.
Yeah, well, it's great hearing about Uptown Stories, because that's definitely one of the things you're doing during this time, which is what...
So my job transitioned to be online. So I have a bunch of different jobs, but my main job is teaching writing, and I was able to transition that to work from home. So instead of teaching at the classroom that I used to have, I teach from my bedroom.
That's
and everyone
fantastic.
tunes in, you know?
Yeah.
So
what also Uptown Stories, as you said, is something that's chosen, I guess, by the kids and their family or their parents.
Yeah.
So puts it in a class, that puts it in, pun intended, a class by itself.
True.
And that it's
true.
chosen.
It is it's not for profit. It's pay what you can. So it's totally open. Anyone can take it. You could take classes for $1 or $100, whatever you want to pay. So it's accessible for everyone in the community. And I definitely live, you know, it's Manhattan, so every economic bracket is right, you know, within stone's throw. So it's an organization I'm really proud to be a part of. It's really great. UptownStories.org. Look us up. Make a donation.
Well, the other aspects of your life now, I guess you describe reading the headlines as being like a kind of a work of fiction, rather than what people think of as reality, particularly today, because they were talking about building mass graves in New York. I don't think.
Yeah.
That's quite a thing to discuss or see in your headline of your news feed.
It is. I mean, these bizarre headlines that I just can't believe are real, like that, like mass grave in the Bronx for temporary burial of or that New York City ran out of body bags.
Yeah. Well, that was
That's insane. You never think you're going to read that. It sounds impossible.
Well, there is a profound disconnection between the world. There's always a tension between the world that we imagine and the world that we're actually living in. What I mean, imagination and reality, I'll call it that, right? And so some people can imagine things really terrible. And so maybe the terrible thing that they imagine won't happen. And the reality is much better than their imagination. So that's a kind of a tension, right? Between their imagination and reality. But then it can be the other way. You could be, as you said people are Pollyannish. I've since this virus has occurred, I've talked to more people who are optimists. And from my I don't know. Well, I don't know if we have to be, but hold on. People have been to me, this is my opinion and experience. It doesn't have to be anybody else's experience. They've been kind of aggressive about their optimism, which to me is kind of off-putting because philosophically I'm actually a pessimist. In full disclosure, which is not an easy thing to be at this time. Actually, you might think, oh well, being a pessimist, you must be prepared for this, but actually, what it does is it puts you in conflict with all the millions of optimists who have to be optimists or whatever. Because I have a minority.
What I meant by saying we have to be Pollyanna right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there's not room for pessimism because it's too dangerous. Because we actually are in such a dark time.
Oh, of course, but I want to make
focusing on the darkness is actually dangerous for the psyche of everyone.
Oh, sure, but I want to make very clear. I mean, pessimism is very misunderstood. In other words, pessimism actually doesn't even mean thinking negative thoughts actually at all. Pessimism is sort of a theory.
Do you mean skepticism?
I mean pessimism philosophically as a position about history. It's connected to the tragic, and it's connected to it's actually connected to the cycle of life, that things rise and fall, and they're born and they die. So it's that kind of pessimism. It isn't negative thinking. So in other words, and of course, sometimes pessimists can be quite optimistic in a way. So these words, of course, it's a semantic thing, I guess. It doesn't really matter. But I found personally that people are kind of aggressive about who they are in a way they were not in an ordinary time or in other words, people's personalities are coming out more strongly. And maybe that has...
Well, I think because all of the things we had that defined us are taken away.
Right.
So we have to forge it in this new environment through words, really. I mean, that's what we have right now.
Yeah.
And so, we are being aggressive to keep our edges because our days are blending into one another. It's like one crazy long day.
Yeah.
What does it matter? Now, I mean, me and you making these plans, what's the difference between Monday and Sunday now and Friday?
Right.
It's like Tuesday, Saturday, nothing means anything. Everyone's either working all the time in the medical world or they're at home piecing together weird versions of what their job used to be. It's, we're grasping at a new paradigm that we haven't created yet. And we are, trying to use the edges and borders of our old world to make this new one. And it's not, it doesn't feel safe. And I feel like that's why people are being aggressive in who they are and their optimism. I mean, for me, so much of my life is band practice and performing and supporting my friends' shows and doing live performances. The fact that that's all gone is like devastating. I'm so sad.
Yep.
I need that kind of attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a real extrovert. I want to be out there making friends. And I am an exhibitionist, and I want attention.
Well, you and I actually have a couple of things in common, and that's one of the things we bond. We're actually alike in that. I didn't start playing the piano to sit in a basement. And I was a child actor in the 70s, and I learned how to make people laugh, and so I definitely have an extroverted, even exhibitionistic part of me. I like to show off, and I like to be in public.
Oh, absolutely. So how you dress. You are an incredible fashion plate. You're for eyes. You know what I mean? You are definitely to be out in the world for eyes. I mean, look at you. I've never seen a better dresser in my life.
Well, thank you. But what I was trying to get at is that this virus is especially bad for you and I, right? It's the opposite.
Yes.
So it's like, we're really in the doghouse.
There's no one to see our cute outfits.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, it's tough.
What about you, Mitch? Are you still getting dressed?
Every day.
So you still act like you're going outside and you get totally dressed?
Every day.
Even your shoes?
Yes, every day.
Wow. God.
I know that's unusual, but I'm admittedly I am eccentric in that department. But enough about me. I wanted to ask you about your own poetry. So what does that mean in terms of being this moment, in terms of creative things you're doing?
Well, I'm envious of everyone talking about the free time they have, because I have been having to learn all these new platforms, and I am not very tech savvy. It doesn't come easily to me. So when it takes one person like 20 minutes to figure out Zoom and how to set up meetings and how to manage meetings, for me, it's taken days.
Right.
And just learn, I've had to learn Zoom, Slack, Discord, Google Meetings, Google Classroom, all these things that are not easy for me. So I actually, and I'm in front of a computer all the time, and I write at the computer.
Right. So you're always in front of that.
I'm spent.
It's awful.
But I have managed to write one story.
Oh, wow.
One short story.
A whole story.
And I did write, I have written poems.
Wow.
So, I mean, I always have to write. I mean, it's like, it feels like I'm not writing, but I am still writing. Did you get my newsletter last night? I did. Thank you. Okay, good. So you saw there were some poems in there. There were pandemic poems in there that I've written since the pandemic.
Yeah, I definitely saw the photograph of you with speaking of with something coming out of your mouth, some kind of a fallout shelter type of image, and
yes, a gas mask.
Gas mask. That's right. I think you're in a bikini. I think it's black and white.
Yeah.
That's very. Yeah. So I think you do what you can in this moment, right? So.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I'm really thankful is that you able to come online like this and talk about what's going on with you in there in New York, and I have a lot of gratitude for that. And I know as you said, you're more busy than ever before because you have to learn all these new technologies, and it's that you take the time out.
Yeah, and there's no boundaries. Like I used to like my time on the train, my commute. I loved the train, and I would be underground and no one could reach me, and I would actually have like a solid private hour going to and from wherever I was going. That's when I would do a lot of writing on my phone, actually. Just to have kind of in-between time taken away.
I will tell you.
Hard time making boundaries.
I will tell you unequivocally, I have many strong opinions that most of them I won't share on my podcast. Not only because they may be minority opinions or might be controversial, but also because it's not really that important. It's more about the guest. I think the human beings invented society, and inventions like privacy and boundaries and sort of a bathroom and bedroom and living room, and in a sense, and the clock and the calendar. These are things I very much. These are things that I support. I think those are progress in human society, and I like those things. And so, for me to see those things destroyed in some way or evaporated would not be a good thing. But I understand many other people are very different. They're more traditional or tribal, and they don't like the modern things. And some of them don't even think much of privacy. So people differ widely on these questions.
Yeah. And diversity makes the world go round.
Yeah, people differ on these questions, and so I guess I'm just seconding what you're saying. For me to blur all these hours and days and night, and that's not good for me. I don't like that. In other words, humans created certain structures in order to counteract that kind of nebulous sort of lack of order or lack of boundary. I mean, humans need both. We need to be wild, but we also need a sense of linear. Humans do need both. You can't have just one, and kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
One other thing that's nice that's happening in New York that I think is happening in other places, but at 7:00 every night, everyone goes into the streets and hollers and bangs pots and makes a lot of noise in appreciation of the healthcare workers that are on the front line.
Oh, wow.
And people that are working at grocery stores. And I mean, there's a lot of, the essential workers basically. And it has been really interesting to see, who's essential. It's not the CEOs. It's the garbage.
Sure.
And it's like, I think that's a good lesson for society, that those are actually the things that are really important, and that's what we need to take care of. It's a profound lesson we're getting to see, and also how quickly the planet is reacting to our changes. The fact that our carbon emissions are so low, and it's had this huge impact, like in India, that you can see the Himalayas, the city is just, that hasn't happened in 30 years. And
that's a big event.
Clear water. Yeah. I mean, all these, it proves that we have the ability to have an impact on the world that makes it healthier for all of us. And we're at this juncture. Are we going to choose money and self-destruct? Or are we going to choose kindness and cooperation and have a different experience than what we've been having in this like hyperdrive capitalistic world, this momentum, this vector we're on? This is a watershed moment. So where are we going to go after this?
That's excellent that you're sharing that now. And I look forward to, again, I thank you for coming on and expressing your perspective on it, which
thank you for asking me.
Which is much needed, and it's going to be part of the mosaic or kaleidoscope, which will be the episode. So thank you, Jane LeCroy.
I'm looking forward to it, Mitch.
And be safe in New York. New York is the greatest place in the world. I'll say that. I say that without reservation, and I don't know if everybody realizes that, but
we love this lady.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, my dear.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everybody needs an anchor in life. You, me, just everybody. Anchor made this whole show possible. I'm immensely grateful to them. You too can use Anchor to make your own shows and create your own vision. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you.
Well, hello, Heather Kapplow.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. Welcome to Journey of an Aesthete.
Thank you.
And I know you from back in the day, I guess in the OOs, because I was just saying that I remember came across a photograph. I think I think it was you and maybe Tally, and maybe you had worked on a film or at the Coolidge Corner Theater, and you mentioned the Berwick art, the Berwick. There were all these things.
Yeah.
Things at that time.
Yep.
And so some of the guests on the show are people I've never met, and some of them are people who I have met. And so it's good to have that mixture. But this, of course, is a special episode I'm calling Kaleidoscope of Souls, and you're a part of it.
Well, thank you for including me.
Is there anything you want to talk about? Because I was originally moved to include you because of this walking project.
Uh-huh.
Did you want to talk about that or anything else, or walking in the time of COVID-19 is what it says? Yeah.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that. I mean, it's right now basically what I'm doing is sending out every week, usually on a Sunday, but sometimes I'll have another extra one if there's something going on in the world that prompts it. These sort of prompts for people to take walks within the parameters of whatever kind of walking is possible for them right now. So for some people, the group right now has about 250 people, and they're all over the world. So some people are in situations where they can't leave their homes at all, and some have, like, I'm in Boston, and we're encouraged to stay inside, but we're allowed to take walks for exercise or to go get groceries or something like that. So the group sort of takes into account that whole range and gives people a prompt every week to contemplate, so that if they're only able to go along a path that they have a lot of experience of, they can sort of see the path differently, either because of these times or because of, a perspectival prompt that I've given them. And then I also make a version for people who they're sick and can't leave bed at all, or can't leave their homes at all. There's usually a way to do the exercise modified for those conditions.
So that's excellent. So that's an interactive project that uses the internet, and it's in complete response to where we are right now in history. Now, what would you say the differences or connections or similarities of your artistic practice in days past or currently? In other words, what is your experience of changes in your life, either in the immediate physical environment or in terms of what, comes to mind about that?
Yeah. Well, it's sort of an interesting moment for me because I was traveling all of last year I was working on one project for the whole year, which is not something I've ever done before. Wow. So I was not at home at all. And it feels like, I was home for maybe 2 months of the year. And so I got back at the beginning of January, and I was sort of like was kind of recovering and processing and not really starting any new projects yet. And then this kind of kicked in just at the point where I was about to start. I was supposed to be at a residency right now in St. Louis, actually. Wow. So just as I was about to start thinking about the next thing, this hit. So I feel like I've sort of been on hiatus from making art in a certain way. And the walking project was more just a way of connecting with people, I think. And it's been, there's only, I think, of the sort of 250 plus people who are signed up for it, only 1 or 2 people a week submit back some kind of reflection. But I hear from people that it's helping them think about things differently, and they're appreciating it, even if they're not submitting anything back. So I guess I would say that right now is just a big moment of rethinking and change for me anyway. I think it might have been, even if this hadn't happened, but this is definitely making me, it's giving me pause. It's giving everyone pause. And I guess that particular project, the walking project, which I don't really think of as mine, it's kind of shared with everyone, but what it has in common with previous work is that I do like to do things collectively as much as possible. I collaborate as broadly as possible. And everything is about just sort of exercising your mind's capacity to tell a different story about what's going on. Not just, a different story one time, but maybe a different story every day if you need to. So it's emphasizing that capacity, I guess, which other projects have done as well.
So in that sense, it's actually a continuation of things you've been involved in.
Yeah.
You talk about changes. Now, what are some changes? What are some things different or new that you're engaging in, either in terms of ideas that you wouldn't have had before, or anything else, or in terms of anything that comes to mind? Because you're in Boston now. You were going to be in Missouri. You were going to go to Missouri.
Yeah, not for long, just for a few weeks, but yeah.
Yeah.
Not even like 12 days or something. So.
And that's a certain kind of life, and that's a certain kind of artistic practice that a person is traveling like that. And it's very similar, actually, to what some musicians do, actually. When a musician goes on the road or something, it seems similar to that. So but you're in. I take it you're in Massachusetts now. So, what are some changes and ideas that you have or had or thinking?
Well, like I said, I think I've been I was in a kind of reevaluating or just sort of taking stock moment anyway when this started. And also, in some ways, things haven't changed that much for me because I've always worked pretty remotely in order to enable traveling, and it's always been very insecure because it's gig work, so I'm always insecure.
Wow.
But I think I'm dealing with I have a lot of anger at and I'm seeing it through my arts community internationally, but especially in the U.S. at how badly, compared to other countries, artists are being supported through this, and everyone is being supported, just the healthcare choices. So dealing with a lot of anger I wasn't expecting to deal with around this. And because I'm in close contact, I'm part of having some giant group Zooms with 400 people.
Wow.
Artist community folks talking about their experiences, or smaller ones, groups of people between 20 and 60 or something, that I'm getting a lot of feedback from around the world about comparative experiences of this. And it's bringing up some kind of anger at how our country's handling some of it. And then I guess what else is different is I'm starting to think about those technologies, which I've always used for work purposes, but never in a creative environment, and how to sort of use them more creatively. And that's been fun. I'm just starting to play with the capacity to make a Zoom frame into an artistic medium, for example. Yeah.
So that's actually almost like a change in medium.
Yeah, well, the medium's the same, but I do a lot of stuff that's performative, and so you can use that space as a stage in a different way, and I've always used it for just work. I never even thought of it as something I could play with. So that's a positive and interesting thing that's come out of it.
Well, and that's sense, you're a perfect guest for this show, because if you're talking to 400 people or something like that on Zoom, and you're actually in conversation with different artistic institutions or communities around the world, and you're getting feedback about how people feel about what's going on, that's great. That's fantastic. Even if the reason
intense though sometimes intense. It's intense sometimes.
Emotionally intense, yeah. So you said that you yourself have a lot of anger. Now, people came into this event with different emotional makeups, and I'm very close to you. I'm not such a how do I put this delicately? I'm someone for whom anger is not a taboo emotion.
Yeah.
And so I've always experienced a lot of it in my life, although, of course, I do a lot of work on a daily basis to manage that. But I've always been on very comfortable terms with that emotion. It's been played. So I often wonder, someone that doesn't have that, or someone that develops that later or earlier. That's an interesting question, isn't it? Other people are at peace in this. I talked to one artist who feels at peace at not having to deal with agents and the business aspect. So she feels liberated. She feels liberated from that. So she's almost the opposite of angry. Everybody's different. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and I have to say, it's not like I'm expressing this anger. I probably will express it in an abstract way through a project at some point, but I think right now it's just more, acknowledging the inequities that this is bringing to the surface, and how sharp they are, and I feel like it's important to keep them present in conversations, even if I'm not, we can't go out in the streets and demonstrate right now, so even if I'm not doing something visible at the surface of my creative activities, or even social media engagement or things like that, I'm keeping it in the conversation because I'm really conscious of it.
Mm-hmm. What comes to mind are some things people have said in one of these Zoom conferences, something that will stay with you that a person has reported or a person has said?
Yeah. Well, I think in the Zoom conferences, it's more in the, I shouldn't even call them conferences. They're more like convenings. And I think there it's more people just sort of checking in with each other. It's the anger the things that are making me angry are more things that are coming through the, traditional media streams. Although I do talk to people who say, they're listening to sirens outside their home nonstop, or they're watching the death count go up in their community and things like that. But and then just people in sort of support networks that I'm part of who are saying that they've been trying for months now, or weeks and weeks now, to get small business loans that were supposed to be applicable to people who work independently, and none of them have been able to access them, things like that. Yeah. But things that I'm hearing in those larger convenings, I think, one of the things I'm hearing a lot of artists express is pressure that they feel from their communities to sort of not entertain, but immediately interpret and make sense of, and move us culturally forward in this moment, and that they're struggling with a desire to live up to that standard, and also a sense that it's okay to not create anything and to be, just like being, coping,
So people have felt new pressure. That's in contrast to another episode I did where somebody felt liberated from pressure. You're saying these artists feel pressure to be an political activist, or spokesperson,
or pressure to just create. Artists are not always political activists. They're often cultural activists. So offering new metaphors, or offering new new creative ways of managing stress, or I think at least within the community I work within, which is a very public engagement kind of arts program, people are feeling like they're publics, I guess, or they're co-creators, and communities are wanting immediate results, sort of, and that this is when artists are often feeling like they're needed most, and they're sort of coming to terms with their own needs, which is to just like process this stuff as it's happening, and that maybe demonstrating that instead of quickly throwing together a movie or a song or whatever for the Times, is an act that's important too.
Wow. That's I'm really thankful that you're taking the time to talk about these things, because they are unfolding right now as we're having this conversation. And also because you are involved in all of this culturally, perhaps more than some people. So,
well, you are too, Mitch. Tag, you're it. You're part of this now.
Yeah, I am. Well, yeah. I've been doing a lot of walking. I did the solitary walking yesterday.
Oh, great.
But I am able to walk here, thankfully.
And what is it like where you are?
Well, it's highly rural, so it's radically different than anything I've ever experienced in my life. And so there's a lot of bugs and trees and enormous amount of nature. There's even wild nature, and mountains and sky and all of that. So it's very different.
That's fantastic, actually.
Yeah, again, it's fun. It's ironic that I'm here because I never really loved any of that, truthfully. And I've always been profoundly ambivalent about nature, so it's interesting that I'm here and not someone that dreams about this. It's interesting. Although, people change, and I do enjoy it, and I am part of it now. But I'm never coy with people, and I never give them what they want to hear. I don't say, "Oh, this is just fantastic," because for me, because for me, I am ambivalent. Because I am a creature of the big city. I was born a creature of the big city, and that's part of who I am.
I feel like the last few times I've seen you, it's always been in New York, actually.
Exactly. Well, I think I saw you once at the Baltimore Film Festival. Is that true?
Possible. I can't remember.
Which film festival
that's possible.
was that?
It's possible.
Because you were doing a film. You were part of a film, right? What film was that?
I wasn't part of a film in Baltimore. There was a project that I was doing that it was based out of Chicago that maybe did some shooting in Baltimore. But no, I haven't done much in Baltimore. I've done some writing about a restaurant in Baltimore recently, but I haven't done anything in Baltimore. But in the past I've worked on film projects that were, I think, for some reason I feel like wherever I saw you last in New York was a film screening.
Of course.
And Darcy was there.
It would be.
Yeah.
It would be, but I'm really appreciative of you taking the time.
Thank you for inviting me, Mitch. I'm sorry it took me a moment to sort out good time for it, but I'm glad to be a part of what you're doing.
And thank you, Heather, and keep us posted on what's going on with what these communities are reporting or saying.
All right, and keep walking.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. Take care, Mitch. Bye.
Hello.
Hello, Lin Marcoux?
Yes.
This is Mitch Hampton from Journey of an Aesthete.
Hello, Mitch.
How you doing? It's really good to talk to you. Can you hear everything okay? The reception or?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, I can hear you.
So you are one of the guests in this special episode that I'm calling the Kaleidoscope of Souls. It may have some other titles, but that's the main title. Where am I calling you from? Where are you at this moment?
At this moment, I am my car, actually.
Okay. So I wanted you to introduce yourself to the listeners, if you don't mind, and
no, not.
And tell them what your experience has been at this particular time, given the work that you have done or do, and anything else you want to talk about. We're talking at the end of April 2020, so anything that comes to mind or anything you want to share.
Okay. Yes, well, I am Lin Marcoux, and I am a massage therapist and an energetic healer. I do vibrational work and Reiki, and this virus has pretty much put a stop to my work, like it has for many other people. And what I have noticed about myself through this, even more so, is that my work is really important to me and really brings a lot to my own world, as well as the people that I work on and with. And I found myself going through a period of time where I was just adjusting to not having the contact, and how much human contact is important to me and important to so many people. Actually, I think that massage therapy is an essential business because right now during this time there's so much anxiety and so much fear out there that people are totally stressed out, and one of the things that having a massage does helps a person to relax. So that's been challenging, and I noticed that in the beginning of when the virus first started, became in our awareness, I was buying into the fear along with everybody else, and I have learned many practices on how to work with the mind and how to work with anxiety. And so I, for a period of time, came in and out of that. And I have finally, landed in a place of standing back in my power, that I'm not powerless to this virus. And I've gone back into some of the breathing practices called pranayama to help support my nervous system and to help strengthen my lungs, as this virus it attacks the lungs, and so having good strong lungs is really important, and having a regular meditation practice where you're bringing yourself into a state of relaxation homeostasis. And so I've landed back in that space, and I am, holding people in my thoughts and prayers and in my energetic field, so that when I am in a meditation, the peace that I am able to access within myself, I imagine sending it out to radiate to those who are feeling anxious. So that has given me something that I feel like I'm doing to contribute in a positive way, because that's one of the very important things for me is just how am I contributing in society.
That's a lot to potentially talk about. I only have you for a short time, but you've given us a lot there, just in that description and response. To ask a practical question, you're saying that you can't have certain kinds of proximity. Is that right? Because of what you do, so there's limitations or restrictions. Is that on what's possible in terms of your work, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, it's mandated that massage therapists don't work, and so that really puts a 6 foot distance, with this social distancing is hard to keep, when you're a massage therapist. But I do believe that there are ways to, so as we start feathering back in, there are essential oils that are helpful for, airborne virus, and so I can diffuse essential oils, which will help keep the air, clean, and just make sure that everything gets washed afterwards and wiped down, and
right.
So I'll just be seeing, I'll be slowly beginning to see people again.
So you're going to restart some things, but perhaps in a new way, not in exactly the same way, but you see a continuation of what you're doing, which would be good, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just had a couple of other questions. I'm just wondering, I imagine you talk to some clients long distance or on the computer. Is this, or no?
Mostly for me, mostly over the phone.
Over the phone, okay.
Yeah, I'm a very, I like to connect as, one-on-one and as intimately as I can. So, mostly checking in with people with the phone.
Okay. It's interesting. I mean, I know a lot of people, and like many other things since this virus, they're tend to be divided among themselves about how they even feel about the phone. I got a call from somebody that saying that they hate the phone, hate talking on the phone, but that they were putting aside their negative feelings just because of this time. And so for the first time, they're actually talking to people on the phone. And I imagine there are people opposite this person that maybe would love to be on the phone, like the quintessential teenager of an earlier era, I guess. But it's interesting. So people. So I guess you're having to use this technology that's actually, I guess it used to be an analog technology in a new environment. I guess as long as you can have a connection with somebody I think that's the most important thing, even though there's more or less ideal forms of connection, right? So.
Absolutely. It's very important to keep connecting with others. And, the other thing for me is spending time in nature every day. That is just a vital part of my day. It brings me, it brings me so much joy. And so I'm out there every day.
Uh-huh. What exactly are you interacting with? I guess a lot of water, right? Because is there water where you are, but also sky, and of course the mountains.
Yes. So forest, and there's there's a lot of birds, and just life and nature, and it's interesting to watch. Even though everything, there's a lot of things that have stopped right now. The earth is continuing, and spring is bringing all this new life, and so every time I go out for a walk, it's a little bit different than the day before. There's a different flower that might be blooming, different bird that I noticed. I heard a bob white this morning for the first time in years.
Huh.
And I thought that was really interesting. I was like, I haven't heard that in years.
When you say years, you mean like a decade, or?
Yeah.
So that's
nature keeps going.
Right. I mean, well, I'm happy that you're getting so much from nature in that sense, and you're able to sort of get outside in nature. Are there any other things you've noticed when you were out there, other than animals that you haven't heard from, in flowers? Are there things that have taught you something about nature or yourself, even though it's a different organism or a different kind of species? What kinds of things have you taken from those experiences, more generally or specifically?
So the water. So where I walk, I'm by a creek that runs pretty strong, and I've often watched the water and noticed that when there's an obstacle, it just flows around it. And it's a reminder for me that no matter what is placed in my path, to just keep flowing and find a different way. And so for me, it's been a reminder that, right now, while we're in this time, this doesn't have to stop me. This doesn't have to stop my world. I can learn to flow around it and with it. And so water to me is a good teacher, watching it and listening to it.
Well, hearing you talk about that reminds me of I feel one of the most influential talks I've ever read in my life. And that's the discussion of water by Suzuki Roshi, or Shunryo Suzuki. And he has a talk called Nirvana the Waterfall. And he's talking about the first time he ever saw Yosemite in his life, when he was in the United States for the first time. And of course I won't read the passage here, but it's really something. And he talks about how the water droplets are like our lives, in the sense of the way that they fall, and sometimes they seem slow, and then they're fast, and how he talks about how the water, the enormity of the enormity of the pressure on each water drop, and the whole process is quite beautiful. I mean, it's really, really something.
I'll have to go read that.
It's in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind.
Okay.
It's good stuff.
Lovely. Yeah, beautiful.
Well, Lin, is there anything else you want to say before we unfortunately sign off? And you, anything that comes into your mind or heart?
What comes into my mind right now is that there is not much information out there for the people about supporting your immune system. Most of what's out there, most of what's in the news is a lot of fear-based thinking, and that when we're in a place of fear, we are putting our internal resources that can be used for, rest and renewal and creating a healthy body, a healthy immune system. We're putting our resources into fighting the tiger. So because it places us into this fight or flight place. And so all the energies go into that. What I would say is as much as people can, to just return to the breath and to return to the things that, fill you up with joy, and be, feeding yourself well, resting well, and just really taking this time to nurture is just so important right now.
Wow, thank you, Lin, for coming on this podcast and mentioning these things. I don't think there's anybody else. I don't think there's anybody else that could say it any better. So I'm grateful you can be part of this episode.
Me too. Thank you so much, Mitch.
Thank you, and be safe, of course, and continue your practice in whatever form. Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I will. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Amanda Maciel Antunes, Dama.
Hi, Mitch. How are you?
Good. It's Mitch Hampton with Journey of an Aesthete, of course, and we are going to record now a very short discussion during the this time we're all living through and in and with. I call it Kaleidoscope of Souls, different working titles. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's been a couple of weeks since we talked. Maybe what's the state of your own where you are situated in Los Angeles, and the kind of stuff you've been working on or not working on, or what you've been able to do, or just what's going on in the environment. Basically, anything that comes to your mind, you're certainly free to discuss it. So.
Yeah, well, I have, most of us were stuck inside. I've been home for about a little bit over a month now.
Yep.
And I'm lucky I have a home. I'm lucky I have work to do. I've moved my studio to my house, so I've been making work in my living room.
Oh, wow.
In my kitchen, in my yard.
Oh, wow.
I use any little space that I have to create. I haven't really stopped working just because work is therapy to me, and I'm sure it is for a lot of artists that are, have been forced to stay home. And I feel like, in a way, Mitch, I think we spoke about this earlier, but I'm sensing, there's a sense of stillness that I think I very much appreciate about this time of slowing down, and that it's a collective stillness.
Yeah.
And it feels like we all have been given this sort of opportunity to think about what is necessary, and think about, the planet has been affected by this in a positive way. So what does that mean moving forward? And yeah, there's a lot to touch on this. I feel like I've been a bit confused. I've been sad. I've been worried for my family and friends that have been losing jobs and losing losing their careers over this because they don't have, things have been canceling, shows have been canceling. So yeah, there's a lot of worry in the air, and a lot of also, but at the same time, a lot of time to reflect. And how are you feeling about this? Like, how is it affecting you?
Well, I'm not doing anything in my kitchen, in my living room. Well, I am actually. Well, I want to hear more about what you're doing in your kitchen, but no, I'm at my piano a lot. So I've got my
piano with you.
Well, my piano's in my home, thankfully, blessedly.
Okay.
So, but I just happen to be sitting, like I'm at my piano right now as I'm talking to you. So I'm not saying that I couldn't say for sure that I'm doing any more work than I was. But that continues. And, I'm doing, what I'm basically been doing is writing one composition that I plan to be a ongoing composition with many movements to go on for a very long time in this time. And so my way of responding is to have a kind of a one piece about it, it's not about it, but one piece that's kind of like modular, that pieces can come and go, and you could take things and add things, and it's kind of a very flexible form. And that's what I've been working on. But that's a very simple thing to describe, I guess. I don't think it's that complicated, but so
that sounds a very exciting piece for you.
And
but yeah, I think in part of what I was saying, like the time that we've had in our hands, and it's not all of us. I'm not speaking for all of us, because some of us are still working and have to be, facing the risk of being out there. So in a lot of ways, I feel really lucky that I get to be inside. I get to be home, and I don't have to go out there and, and put myself at risk and other people at risk. So yeah, I feel very lucky. And working for me has been, it's a different kind of work. The work I do in the studio has been in response to the space that I have. Working from home, I haven't worked from home in a long time. So
I guess I should add that you're in a significant home, architecturally and historically. Is this correct?
Yeah.
So
I've been here for about a year. Yeah.
You might want to talk about the meaning of that, or what that involves, if you want to.
Sure. Yeah. I'll move back. I'll go back a little bit in time, because a year ago I moved into this home, serendipitously in a way. I was walking in the area and found the sign, and ended up meeting a landlord who ended up offering the place for me and my partner to rent. Little did I know that I was moving into one of my, heroes through my life. She's a writer. Her name is Anais.
Yes.
And
Anais.
She's been a huge influence in my work and my practice in the past 10 years. And moving into this place was what I call, I don't know, it was not just a coincidence, I feel. So I started a project. As part of my work as a performance artist and installation artist, I was doing research at UCLA Library, going through her original manuscripts and her diaries. And the work, I actually finished the research right before the pandemic started, but by being stuck inside in this home now, I've been giving this time to reflect on what I've researched about her, and thinking about all the little things that I want to do with this project, and it's actually giving me an opportunity to finish it. So what I'm doing in the kitchen, in the living room, outside, in the yard, is all part of this project I call the Trapeze Project.
Called
I bought a book.
The Trapeze?
The Trapeze Project, yeah.
Okay.
So Trapeze is what Anais called, life in between places, a life between her life in the East Coast with her husband there and her life here in the home with her husband here. She was bigamous.
Her two husbands, yes.
Yeah, she lived like that for a long time.
A little bit like the fictional character Donna Flor, yeah. No?
Yeah, Donna Flor. Maridos, yeah. And so in thinking of trapeze, for me, it's not about having, two families, but it is about having this life in between places. As an immigrant, I'm from Brazil, and I've been living here for about 10 years, and I'm in the process of getting my citizenship, and I'm a little confused about, what this means moving forward. And my citizenship is actually at a pause right now because of the pandemic, so I haven't been able to even follow through.
So what you're saying is that you were going to go finalize your ceremony? Is that what it is? And that was sort of canceled or postponed because of the virus?
The oath ceremony is a large event.
Sure.
With, with a lot of people that have entered the process come together to do the oath, and it was canceled. It was scheduled to be 2 weeks ago on a Thursday.
Oh, wow.
So obviously I didn't get to go. So being put on pause in between things, and having this project on my lap where I'm reading about this woman studying and researching and going deep into consciousness and saying, and this idea of looking inwards that she so much, valued. I think there's a lot that I had to explore there. And in a sense, having this time and being here has been really valuable to me, and I'm not taking it for granted. And I'm working really hard to get this written down and thought about, and so I can hopefully someday share. And I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if it's a book. I don't know if it's just a performance piece. Ideally, I think it would be maybe both.
Wow. Are you thinking? Are you thinking about how it's going to be? I guess you already. By that you mean how you're going to present it. Is it going to be done on the computer screen or virtual, or is it right? Is it going to be?
Yeah. How I'm going to present it, and how I'm going to present it, even considering how we're not going to go back to normal life. So what does it look like for performance and to have an audience now? I don't know. But yeah, there's I feel, and I have to say that there's a kind of a feeling of extraordinary time.
Extra what time?
That, like, there's a feeling of to be living in an extraordinary time.
Oh, extraordinary time. Yeah. Oh, sure. Sure. It's a world historic event.
And for the creative, and for a creative person, for anyone who's a maker and intuitive and imaginative, I think we can take this as something to learn with and grow, and
that's one of the things about this time that is really hard on me. Because temperamentally, I only really like the quotidian and the small, and I really dislike historical making events. I would have hated to have been alive during the French Revolution or during the American Civil War. I'm thankful that I wasn't, I kind of missed 67 and 68 in a way because I was just born, and because. Now nothing against those events. I'm not saying that if you love those events and if you like being in part of events where the whole world is watching, all power to you. That's some people like that. But I'm always like the opposite, because I sort of feel like I can burrow and I can And I could sort of make something mean what I want it to mean, rather than consensus. I'm always sort of pushing back against consensus, and so those things are challenges, of course, now because I'm in a big event. I'm living through it. So,
has it been keeping you from making new work, or no? Or you feel?
Well, no, I have this I have this big piece of music that I'm calling "All Dressed Up and No Place to Go." It's the name of it. It's very humorous.
So you are motivated. You are motivated to create.
I'm not. I'm motivated. I can't. I really, honestly can't say with full assurance what role my place in history is playing in this. In other words, I can't really know if I wouldn't be doing this music without the event, or if I would not be doing something. In other words, I can't really know that. And also, I try not to speculate or analyze too much about such things, because I think to do that is a mistake. Because for me, it's a mistake because I think the work is what's important.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
For me, works of art, again, they're not really about these big events. They're actually, I think, art is in spite of the big event. So I think if someone writes a novel, during a really huge event, and there's a lot of great novels that are about huge events, because what's best or interesting about those novels is how they call into question the bigness of those events. Or they don't take the event. They don't take the event's account of the event. They don't see the event the way the event is talked about in textbooks or history books. Maybe. Totally, but that's I
agree with you in that way. I think for what I have been feeling, which is the shift for me of, and it's also a contradiction because I'll get there, but for for myself as a working artist, I think there's always been in a world pre-COVID.
Yeah.
There was a sense of there's this attitude and this pressure that the outer world we comply with to make, to create, to produce, to be always motivated to get stuff done, to have accomplishments.
Yep.
To reach out, to network. There's, in this, all of these pressures are gone now.
That's something that's really, let me say something for a second. That's something you and I really agree on, that there's something, I don't want to know if I want to say positive, you could say positive, but there's something, I never liked those things, right? You didn't either, right?
Me neither.
Yeah, you hate it, right? We both just liked all that crap. I guess I call that crap from the world. But of course, it's a further question how much that stuff really has to do with art making at all, or if it's just unimportant.
I don't think it has anything to do with art making. I think art can be done in any way at any time, and it doesn't have to be even shown. You can do it on yourself in your living room, never show anybody.
Yep.
It's yours to be had.
Yep.
It's a process. It's a personal experience that oftentimes we expose, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
The beauty of it is that anyone at any time can reach out for that. If and this idea of art consumption and art critics and art festivals and all these things, that this is the commercial side of art is in the exhibitions and is what makes the artist have this urgent need to always be producing.
Yeah.
But in fact, it's so important to understand. I think for me, it's so important to also not produce and to just be bored out of my mind in order to think about, the work in a deeper sense and what is it that I'm doing. And most of the work that I'm proud of is work that comes out of boredom and stillness.
Yeah, that reminds me of this Erica Jean interview. This Erica Jean, Duguay's favorite writer.
Yeah,
in my favorite writer actually. But she shows that she actually wrote a piece on the importance of leisure or not, in order to create an artistic, to write her novel or story. And she wrote an essay about the importance of downtime, how they have to cultivate downtime.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah.
Because the thing of it is, when you're not doing something, you're actually doing something. That's the other thing too. When you're not, so you know what I'm saying, there's something.
No, absolutely. You're doing something constantly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's this for some reason our world and maybe we can explore this by talking, but like I believe part of it is this rushed capitalist Western mentality that oftentimes makes us feel like we are not doing enough.
Yeah.
And this feeling of not doing enough is, shouldn't be there. Like if we're not doing enough for yourself,
mm-hmm.
that's what you should be. I don't know. To me, sometimes like I've been working outside in nature a lot. So every day I take I walk for 30 to 40 minutes up the mountain. I live by the mountain.
Oh, you're lucky.
So
it's so beautiful where you are.
Lucky.
It's so beautiful where you are. I mean, one of my favorite things to do in Los Angeles is to hike Griffith Park Observatory and back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's the greatest walk you could do. Really.
No, I'm really lucky to be near nature, to have access to just, this vast, rich environment that is just surrounded by trees and animals and birds and deers. And it's wild.
What kind of animals have you seen?
Oh, I see deer almost every day.
Every day.
And I see birds around. There are bears around here. Sometimes we spot them. And lots of lizards and little wild rabbits.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and in a way, I think it's kind of it's a beautiful thing that you and I can actually talk like this a long distance.
Really is.
I'm in this small little town in a strange state in the South, and I'm in this rural. It's rural, and you're in Los Angeles, California. We're having this conversation.
Well, not quite. I'm in LA County, but I'm in Sierra Madre, California,
that's right.
which is also a tiny little town by the foot of the mountain. Yeah.
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 I miss dearly California. You can't do everything. You can't do everything at once. You can't be in all places at the same time.
No.
At least not physically. Yeah. I think you can if you take a trip or if you maybe you can. But is there anything else you want to say further about either what you're doing in the living room and kitchen, or how you're utilizing the house, or what your anything that comes to mind before we go? Or
well, I just sometimes I feel like I hear sometimes from friends just online and artists that I know that it's been hard to create and hard to even think about making something in this time, because we're just there's this feeling of like sadness.
Absolutely.
Disruption, lack of resources. And that all of that is, of course, a big part of what we're living now.
Yep.
But sometimes, to make something, to feel good about yourself in the moment that you are, I don't think it requires a ton of resources. You can make something which is about anything.
Yeah.
I'm in the kitchen, I pick an object and I just try to do something with that object every day. Reinvent it. What am I supposed to be looking at? So I've been using actually a lot of, I've gone back to sewing. I pulled out my sewing machine and I've been stitching again and stitching other types of finding fabric, recycling fabric in my closet, because it's what I have available right now. I haven't, gone to an art store to get anything. I've been finding supplies in my own home. I picked up 5 pieces of logs that my neighbor chopped the other day. make something with. So it's just,
oh, wow.
it's like, it's kind of a free, to me, it's like a time for free form and reinventing how I function with material. And materials are available to me and available to all of us.
I envy you folks that do visual things, you know, because I don't have, I've joked about on this show, I don't really have drawing skills or illustration skills, and I can't sew or any of those things. Those are remarkable things to do. That people that can do that. That's so. I'm really.
I feel the same about you. I feel the same. I envy people who can create music because I feel like music is such a part of how we feel at peace with ourselves. Like it's easy I can meditate with music, and I wish I could play an instrument. So I'm there with you. Yeah.
Well, Dama, this has been a beautiful conversation, and sometimes even the times are kind of ugly in some ways now. And I should say that hasn't been and has not been a breeze, and creating this piece of music has not been easy. It's not easy. And you know, I only restricted myself to one piece. You know, that's that's why I did that. I stripped everything away. Well, I'm just going to do this one damn thing and pick at it. That was a way of solving that problem for me of having to worry about with what I can do. But it's great having you here on Journey of an Aesthete, because in a lot of ways the things you're talking about are the heart of our show, the very heart of our show and what it's about. So.
Well, thank you for doing this show. Thank you for, also been listening to the people you're talking to, and it's really inspiring. It's nice to hear.
That's why I do it. So thank you, Donna.
That you're working on this.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Be safe.
All right. You too. Talk soon.